Hey everybody, this is Dust for Dustin on Gaming with a little bit of a replay of a couple matches I played against a friend for his testing purposes. The deck we played on our side was Grixis Shadow, which I don't seem to have the Grixis Shadow. Yep. So this is the Grixis Shadow list we played. This is one of the more updated versions. It's been a while since I've played Grixis Shadow. So was interested to try out the new builds with Faithless Looting and Battle Rage being the norm as opposed to Serum Visions and Kolaghan's Command last time we played the deck. I did make one switch to the deck. There was 4 Gurmag Anglers. I cut that for... can't remember what the card I cut it for was. But this is basically the list. I think it might have been a 17th land. So yeah, basically the new versions of Grixis Shadow, if you haven't really been paying attention, include some amount of Mishra's Baubles and some amount of Faithless Lootings. I believe that's a Ben Friedman edition, and most of the decks have gone for Teamer Battle Rage over Kolaghan's Command, kind of realizing they're more of an aggro tempo deck than a kind of grindy mid-range deck. There are Kolaghan's Commands on the sideboard, but they're not quite as good as they used to be because a lot of people are bringing in Leyline of the Voids because they're already packing... The black decks are usually packing some amount of Leyline of the Voids for Bridgevine, Hollow One, and Mardu Pyromancer, and also slots in quite nicely against about half of the Death Shadow game plan. So you do have to be kind of mindful of that. That being said, you have your Mishra's Baubles, you have your Thought Scours. So 4 Thought Scour, 2 Faithless Looting, 4 Mishra's Baubles, your cantrips, Stubborn Denials, and Inquisitions and Thought Seizes as your interaction against spells. Lightning Bolts and Fatal Push. There's a bigger emphasis on Lightning Bolts in these builds. It used to be Fatal Push was the big thing. Like you had 3 or 4 Fatal Pushes and like 1 Lightning Bolt. Now it's switched back to where Lightning Bolt's the key spell on one. Fatal Push is an additional removal spell. And then Snapcaster Mages when you have all this early game value with Thought Seizes, Thought Scours, Stubborn Denials, Fatal Pushes, Lightning Bolts. Also, Dismember can be a 1-mana removal spell if you have enough life to pay for it. And then Street Raid to enable your life loss plan for Death Shadow. And then 1 Tassiger and 3 Gurmag Angler. This used to be a 2-2 split, but people have realized Gurmag Angler is a bigger beater. So that's pretty much it. 17 lands, bunch of shock lands and fetch lands to pay for your Death Shadows. Emphasis on the black with Watery Grave. You have 2 Watery Grave, 2 Blood Crypt, and 1 Cements. Yep. So double red can be a problem. That's why some of the sideboard cards are what they are. Sideboard, you have the 4 Stubborn Denial and a couple Disdainful Strokes. Stubborn Denial comes in against anything where you're trying to tempo your opponent or against combo or control decks. Disdainful Stroke, things with 4-mana spells like Cryptic Command, Jace the Mind Sculptor. Also helps deal with Tron, also helps deal with Valakut. Additional Fatal Push when you need removal spells. Radiant Flames and Pyroclasm to help deal with the aggro decks. Things like Elves, things like Collected Company, etc., which can be a problem for this deck. The go-wide strategies tend to be an issue. 4 Leyline of the Void for decks with graveyards. Anything from Hollow One to Bridgevine to Mardu Pyromancer and the Mirror Match. Generally going to want to bring this card in. A Braid, good against artifact decks like Affinity. Also pretty good where you need a 3-mana kill your dude. A couple Kolaghan's Commands when you're trying to grind. Also good against artifact decks like Lantern and Affinity. And then 1 Engineered Explosives is kind of a catch-all. So the matchup we're playing in the games that I played was the match between Mardu Pyromancer and Grixis Shadow. And I think I'm not a huge expert on either deck, to be honest, but the matchups we played, it seemed to be pretty much, did the Grixis Shadow deck draw a threat? If not, X happens. If we do draw a threat and they can't answer it, Y happens. So, playing 2 matches, I got 2-0 in one match, and won the other match 2-0, so we're going to go ahead and get into that. he mulligan, he's on the play. This hand's reasonable. We have Thoughtseize, a couple Mishra's Baubles, so we're pretty much going to get full knowledge of what's going on. There's a couple different things you can do with Baubles. One, you can obviously bobble your opponent. If you happen to have Street Wraith, you can bobble yourself and decide whether you want to keep it with a Street Wraith cycle before you play your fetch land. So there's some sequencing things with Death Shadow. I'm not the most proficient with it, but I'm at least aware of some of the tricks. Opponent mulligan to 6, plays Blackleaf Cliffs and passes. We play Bobble, we target them. See they have Young Pyromancer on top. We play Bobble, target ourselves. We see that we have Snapcaster Mage. Unfortunately, we're going to have to shuffle. We choose not to shuffle away because we have the Blood Crypt here, so that was kind of important seeing that we had that on top, because that's kind of a card you generally want to be. We Thoughtseize them. We see Collective Brutality, Lightning Bolt, and Lingering Souls. So, Bolt I somewhat care about, but not really. Brutality, the only card we're going to have in our hand at this point is Thought Scour, and if he wants the Brutality or Thought Scour, I'm fine with that. And then Lingering Souls is the most problematic card for Death Shadow, so that's the card I end up taking. My friend was like, why did you take Lingering Souls over Collective Brutality? I'm just like, well, to my knowledge of the matchup, you don't want your opponent to have Lingering Souls. So I end up taking Lingering Souls here. Leave them with a hand of, these are basically their 5 cards, including the card they're going to draw. So if he wants to Brutality us, he can Brutality us. It's kind of whatever. We draw Snapcaster Mage. We draw a land. Our opponent plays their Marsh Flats. Can't remember if they played Pyromancer here or if they played Brutality. I guess they played Brutality. They go ahead and take our Thought Scour. I'm guessing, yep, take Thought Scour. It's kind of the card that matters most here. Play another Bobble. I believe we target ourselves with this one. Yep. We targeted them. They have Kolaghan's Command. Okay. So we have not much going on here, so we just pass. It's possible I should have done this during their upkeep so they couldn't Thoughtseize or Inquisition us. So that's another thing with the sequencing. Summer Denial is a pretty decent one here. End up going with Young Pyromancer, which is pretty annoying because we don't have an answer to it right now, but we fetch. I believe we fetch Shock here. Yeah, the weird thing about Death Shadow is having a fetch Shock, kind of lowering your life total here. So I hold up Stubborn Denial, hoping to catch either Kolaghan's Command or Lingering Souls, and we're not able to catch either here. This is kind of a runaway game from here. We don't really have a threat. We don't really have any answers to their stuff. We run Snapcaster Mage out with Thought Scour up. Hope to trade with their cool thing. I believe they have a Bolt in hand, right? Which I don't understand why he didn't fire off the Bolt there. Go ahead and Thought Scour. Draw another Thought Scour. Thought Scour. Not really seeing any threats, not really drawing any threats other than the Snapcaster Mage, which, I mean, the Snapcaster Mage is fine, but it's not particularly great. These things continue to pressure us, kill one of the spirits. It's a little thing, but we do have plenty of ground pounders, so it's important to kill the flyers. Go ahead and fetch. Do not shock this time, because our Death Shadows are already out of bolt range. Snapcaster Mage isn't bad here. I think we Snapcaster Thoughtseize. No, Thoughtseize Inquisition. Much better on our life total here. Go ahead and cast Inquisition. Hoping to bait out their Kolaghan's Command. I think we go ahead and double Stubborn Denial here. They pay for it. We fetch again. Get our... Probably... Yeah, I guess we already had our island, so I had to shock there. Inquisition Resolve, take their bolts. Now we're at a position where we're not in terrible shape. Drew Faithless Looting, pitch land, Team Battle Rage. Go ahead and cast Thought Scour here, just kind of cantripping. Drew Gurmag Angler, which is reasonable, but we know our opponent has Dreadbore in hand. So we can't attack, they just untap, Dreadbore. This is a swing they probably should have made last turn. We go ahead and kill their Elemental now. They get more Lingering Souls, and that's pretty much the game. Yep, you don't draw a threat early against a deck packed full of removal. The pressure you make on their life total and such isn't quite as relevant. Alright, so on to sideboarding for the matchup, and this is pretty much the sideboarding I used in both games. I sideboarded out some amount of the graveyard interactions pretty much. Like, okay, let's start with what cards I wanted to bring in. I brought in the 4 ley lines, I believe this particular go-round, and I brought in the 2 Radiant Flames. The cards I cut were the Temur Battle Rages, one of the Gurmag Anglers, a Street Wraith, and I believe the last cut was maybe a Snapcaster Mage. It was one of these like utility spells. It was either like Snapcaster Mage or one of the discard spells. The reason you go down, at least the reason I went down those cards, was because my opponent is bringing in Leyline of the Void. It's just a card you're going to bring in against the decks that have Delve Threats and Snapcaster Mages. So we have 8 cards that get affected by the graveyard, plus 2 Faithless Lootings. So it's generally good enough, like when you're having your opponent's threat base, to have that, and it's not a card they can easily counter. This time I brought in the Radiant Flames. Next time I think I bring in Radiant Flames and Engineered Explosives. So sideboarded slightly differently, but in the end it's roughly about the same. You're bringing in 2 sweepers to counteract their tokens getting out of hand. You are kind of the aggro deck in the matchup, but it does pay to have ways to deal with their chump blockers pretty much. And obviously, as you saw, Lingering Souls is definitely a problem for the 1-for-1 removal deck. This hand's pretty reasonable. We have Faithless Looting, a Street Wraith, a Thoughtseize on 1. I believe I end up leaning on Thoughtseize here. He mulligans again. In the end, though, their card quality is kind of higher than ours, so get Blood Crypt here since we drew the island. Go ahead and Thoughtseize them. See a hand of Reveler, Engineered Explosives, Kolagon's Command, and Pyromancer. I think I take... I don't know. Looking at this hand, I think I end up taking either Reveler or K-Command. Like Pyromancer, I'm kind of fine with them having, because I have the sweeper. I guess I take the K-Command. Makes the most sense, because we usually want to win the game before the... Go ahead and cast Faithless Looting here, since we have an extra land to pitch. I'm going to end up pitching Faithless Looting and a land here. Yep, Faithless Looting the Bloodstained Mire. Pitching the Mire might not have been correct, but our life total is already low enough. We're close to casting Death Shadow anyway. So that's a fetch here. Plays Young Pyromancer. We Thought Scour on instep here. Get a Steam Vents, drop a Snapcaster Mage in the graveyard. Then we draw a Death Shadow here. Play out Death Shadow knowing it's likely to die anyway. Yeah, because we knew they had the Engineered Explosives. So we knew it was just going to die as it was. So, buys us a turn. Cycle the Street Wraith into Leyline of the Void. I think we just cast Leyline of the Void here, kind of strand their Bedlam Reveler in hand. He's kind of constrained on mana, blows up, starts attacking with the Pyromancer here. Us being low on life obviously kind of hurts us here. Pitch the Scalding Tarn and the Mishra's Bauble. It's possible I should have held on to the Bauble. just because it was another cantrip. The cards in our hand obviously weren't doing much. Drops us to 5 here. They bolt us, we bolt them. Faithless Looting. And I believe a bolt finishes us off here before too long. Yep, Lingering Souls also. Clean things up with Radiant Flames. Draw land. They play Leyline of the Void themselves. And we keep drawing lands. Draw a Bolt, which is nice, but they're on 12, we're on 3. Kolaghan's Command drops us to 1 here. And then we draw Thoughtseize we can't cast. And Pyro, we have to bolt that. Bobble. Yep, and then we get bolted, which we saw from the bobble, I believe. So that was match number 1. It's kind of the situation of we didn't draw an early Death Shadow or an early Delve Threat that they couldn't answer. So sometimes that's the way it happens. Obviously, we saw both decks brought in Leyline. Match number 2 of this Grixis Death Shadow versus Mardu Pyromancer matchup kind of goes back the other way. So on the die roll, we end up getting to be on the play this game. So our hand don't have a threat. We have 3 mana, which is about as much as we need to operate. Snapcaster Mage with some bolts to interact with some early stuff. We just lead on Shockland, or Fetchland Pass. Yep, we get Inquisition here. Go ahead and stub their 1 mana play, which was another nice thing to this hand. We continue to draw lands, though. You know, for a deck that only runs 17 lands, it does tend to draw a lot of lands through the cantrips. So, why did I pass here? I guess because next turn I could... Do I deploy the Angler here? This would be 5, 6, 7... Don't deploy Angler here. I guess because I want to hold up Kolaghan's Command, or not Kolaghan's Command, Stubborn Denial here. Go ahead and shock us down to 11. Inquisition was a nice draw. End up seeing a hand of Lingering Souls, Dreadbore, Kolaghan's Command. I believe I take the Dreadbore here. Yep. Take the Dreadbore. Run out the Gurmag Angler. Holding up Bolt here. Make them think we have Stubborn Denial too. They play Lingering Souls, which is fine-ish. Teamer Battle Rage is nice. Get to get in for some damages here. They don't block, they go to 13. Obviously have the flashback of Lingering Souls available. Drops us to 10 here. Try to flashback, or cast the Lingering Souls, we snap stub. And then go ahead and bolt their face, because either way, bolting their face or bolting their thing, if this was lethal with the Teamer Battle Rage. So it was better to bolt their face because there's still a chance they could have drawn like a Fatal Push or something. They draw a Fatal Push, then we don't get to kill them with this Teamer Battle Rage if we don't bolt their face. So it's better to just bolt the face there. And then untap, swing, they block, we battle rage, we kill them. Then on to game number 2, we sideboarded very similarly to I described last time, only we brought in the 1 Radiant Flames and 1 Engineered Explosives instead of 2 Radiant Flames this time. I think Engineered's a little more viable. This hand, obviously, we have a pretty fast Death Shadow. Get to do fetch, shock, and if we find anything else, then we get to play a turn 2 Death Shadow. So the opponent leads on Leyline here. So slight missequencing here on my part. I probably should have played Bauble to see if we just wanted to play Swamp and Inquisition, but Thought Scour here obviously isn't quite as good given the situation, so we're kind of all in on this Death Shadow this game. We see a hand of Dreadbore, Pyromancer. I believe we take the Dreadbore here. No, we take one of the Pyromancers. When it plays Pyromancer, we play Bauble. We target ourselves, I guess. Reveal a Gurmag Angler, so we're definitely going to fetch that away. So, okay, apparently we're under a flood warning. Bolt their Pyromancer. Next turn we're Thought Scour. Draw another land. Yep, got some Lingering Souls. Thought Scour targets ourselves. Get rid of Thought Scour Inquisition. See a Thought Seize here. Stubborn Denial is a pretty good draw. Take their Dreadbore. Shock this in. Play a Death Shadow. I'll have a Stubborn Denial up. Just tries to erase us, clash back their souls, we stubborn it. Draw a Bauble, play a Bauble. Get a Death Shadow here. Opponent Thought Seizes our Thought Scour, that's fine. I wasn't going to cast it because whatever we'd draw would get pitched away anyway. Draw another Stubborn Denial, good timing. Continue to attack with Death Shadow. I think our opponent's playing around Battle Rage here. Just because they're supremely afraid of dying to that card. Pyromancer, sure. Still an attack with a Spirit, which I don't know if that's correct or not. Draw a Leyline the Void. Go ahead and play Leyline post-combat, I believe. Nope, we don't play Leyline. Maybe we should have there. Opponent decides to block here. Don't understand what their attack there was about. Guess they drew a removal spell. Ah, Kolaghan's Command. Gets countered here. Still get a chump blocker. Plus to 4. Choose not to attack. Go ahead and play a Faithless Looting here. See another Death Shadow. Gonna attack. Obviously have to chump with the Pyromancer. Play another Death Shadow, and then that's pretty much game there. So, that was a rundown on a couple matches I played with my friend when he needed some testing before a PPTQ this past weekend. He's been having some issues against the Death Shadow matchup from the Mardu side. I have a little bit of experience with Death Shadow. I'm not the most proficient technical player with it, so I'm sure there were some mistakes that were made in this video, but just wanted to get this out there since I'd already played the matches. So letting people see that I do play decks beyond burn and control. I'm willing to help people out if they need testing if I've got some time. So this is the list we played. Pretty stock Death Shadow list from what I've seen of late. Obviously, as a burn player, this is a matchup I like to see. A lot of other decks don't like to see this deck as much. It's pretty brutal against the combo decks, pretty decent against Tron. Pretty decent place in the meta right now. It can definitely beat blue-white control. Jessica's a little bit more difficult for it, but it can beat that deck as well. Struggles a little bit against the grindier mid-range decks like Jund and Mardu, but those decks aren't particularly thing. Not sure how its Hollow Moon matchup goes, and there's some other stuff, but just want to play this match out. Show how some of these mid-range matchups can go. Leyline of the Void's certainly becoming a key factor in a lot of those matchups. So if you don't have ley lines and you're playing one of the black mid-range decks, you should probably pick some up. Beyond that, this has been kind of a trial video here with some of the stuff I've played. So this has been Dust for Dust on Gaming. If you're new to this channel and like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. Have a lot of standard modern content. Also doing a little bit of World of Warcraft, a new expansion, Battle for Azeroth. So if you like any of that stuff, feel free to subscribe. This has been Dust for Dust on Gaming.